All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And this meeting is being recorded, so you may have received a little pop-up to click OK that you're okay with being on the meeting that is being recorded. So again, if you need to mute yourself, please feel free, but we do hope to have some discussion, especially later on during the presentation. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time or type in the chat box if you have a question or would like to say something, and I'll try to keep a good eye on that. But first, I would like to introduce David Rothstein. He is director for the Bank On initiative over the United States. So many of you may not have heard of this initiative before. I know it's been around a very long time. So David's kind of going to give us a history on it, the importance of it, and what some of the requirements are. And then after that, we're going to jump into why credit unions should be on that list and get involved, and some of our challenges, some ways that some credit unions are already on the list, and just some other ideas of ways that we can participate with this initiative. So David, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate you, Julie, with your interest in this, your commitment to this work, and also coordinating this webinar. I know how hard it is to coordinate anything during this national pandemic. It's crazy. Also, I wanted to note that feel free to use the chat feature while I'm presenting, talking, so that I'm happy to answer questions as we go. You don't have to completely wait, of course, until the end of the presentation. I want this to be interactive. So I'm going to talk about what's known as the Bank On National Account Movement today, and talk about sort of what is Bank On as a program, but also what does a Bank On account kind of mean. And those are two things that I'll discuss today. You can start the slides. Thanks. Just to give you some background on who we are, the Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund is a national nonprofit organization, often known as the CFE Fund. We have about 4 different program areas that we focus in, all around financial empowerment, as you would imagine. So one is around asset building, working to ensure that people weather financial shocks through savings programs and other mechanisms. The other is through consumer protection initiatives. So we help cities and counties set up departments of consumer protection inside government as a cabinet level agency. And then financial counseling and programs where we do something similar to what I just mentioned around consumer protection is we help cities and counties and now states set up offices or departments of financial counseling where professional curriculum-based financial counseling is provided by municipal government on a one-to-one person basis for free. And then the final piece, last but not least, is the product side of the equation, which is what I focus on, which is around banking access, which is really this movement to help design, facilitate, and foster low cost, safe, fully transactional checking accounts. And that's really sort of where the product side fits into the equation for the CFE fund. You can go to the next slide. So I just sort of mentioned, but Bank On is a national movement to increase access to safe and affordable bank and credit union accounts. So we are particularly focused on helping to create or reform or revise existing account infrastructure that people have for their accounts. We also work to connect people into those accounts. So we don't, we're not saying, we want to meet people where they're at. We're not saying, hey, go, hey, credit union ABC, go create this account and good luck getting people in it. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. Why do we care about this initiative? Well, we know that being unbanked is extremely costly. We know that it can cost an average person 5% of their net income on fees like check cashing, bill payment, ATMs, you name it. It's an expensive way to be in the workforce. And the account, that adds up after each payday. The cost can be staggering. We also did, as I mentioned on the previous slide, we work with dozens of cities and counties who are working on financial counseling. And what we realized in doing our survey research with, with actual data from those financial counseling programs is that banking is a huge determinant of success in counseling. That is to say that for those of you who support and work with different groups to provide financial counseling or financial education, having a bank account will help, will make or break the situation in a lot of these, for a lot of these people. So specifically our findings with the first 5 financial counseling departments that we analyzed were that unbanked financial clients were half as likely to increase their savings and over a third less likely to establish a new and better credit score. We also know that unbanked clients who became banked during their counseling experience were almost 8 times more likely to increase their savings relative to those who had never become banked during that process. So being banked is, we really do view it as something that's necessary and sufficient to financial success. And that's why we care about this initiative so much. You can go to the next slide. So what are we up to as a movement? I'm going to talk a little bit more about what this term means, but currently we have more than 60 financial institutions, so that includes both credit unions and banks of all sizes, who offer accounts that are certified and meet our national account standards. Basically, what that translates to is there's more than 22,000 branches across the country that you can go to get an account that meets the Bank on National Account Standards that resides with a FDIC or NCUAF insured financial institution. We also partner with more than 85 local or regional bank on coalitions around the country. Those green dots on your screen represent where we have coalitions currently. The blue color scheme, we're big fans of blue at the CFE Fund, which is great because it's my favorite color as well. And then also green, which I think people are a little bit more pickier about whether they like green or not. But throughout this presentation, you'll see a lot of blue and green. The darker the blue state, that means that there's 5 or more banks or credit unions that have accounts that meet our standards. The lighter the blue, the less financial institutions that currently offer accounts that meet our national account standards. You can go to the next slide.
And David, I have a question real quick about
Sure.
coalitions. What is the purpose of those local coalitions?
Great question. I was just going to talk about that. So coalitions are generally made up of 4 different groups. Those groups include financial institutions, credit unions, and banks. They also include another group, which is nonprofit organizations like United Ways, urban leagues, financial counseling groups that are part of NeighborWorks or LISC or Enterprise Community Partners, what have you. Additionally, another part of coalitions include municipal government, so city or state government or county government, of course. Also included are agencies with that, so like your Department of Aging, your Department of Workforce Development, or Health and Human Services. That's another bucket in the coalition work. And then the final one are regulators, which include your FDIC or OCC regional staff who work to promote financial inclusion, to be part of their efforts to work with different groups on the ground. Coalitions are generally run by one of those one of those groups that's either municipal government who leads a coalition, like in Atlanta, which is run out of City Hall for the city of Atlanta, or United Way, like in, say, Bank on Jackson, Mississippi, which is run by the United Way and that covers Jackson. But generally, the coalitions are not a program, they are a coalition. So they are all hands on deck with committees. And the big goal of the coalitions have four main goals. The first goal that they have is to work with financial institutions like yourselves to design an account to meet the Bank on National Account standards. That's mission number one. Mission number two is to market and design programming interface to get people into those accounts. So having, bank access as part of like a workforce development program or a free tax preparation program, so that there's a pipeline of people interested in opening accounts. The third thing that the coalitions do is have an infrastructure for broadening their scope and being a stable coalition. So we want and we encourage coalitions to be very, open-ended in terms of having different groups represented, whether, it's a HUD Section 8 agency or a university or whatever it might be. Bringing more people into the fold to work on banking access issues is a really important piece of this work set. And then the final thing that they do is they work on policy issues that are critical and important to the financial access and banking access movement. And so that usually consists of things like um, you could picture, maybe testifying at the state level about, the importance of having financial institutions, that are working on like a CRA, Community Reinvestment Act issue or something like that. So we want them to be advocates for this work. We want them to be the knowledge base for this, so that media and other groups, when they talk about banking access, they're really looking at them as the coalitions as a pillar of strength in the movement.
Okay, so that sounds like great networking opportunities for the credit unions. And if we have credit unions interested in learning more about this initiative or joining in on this initiative, then probably the first place they would start, aside from coming through us, is to connect with their most local coalition. Is that right?
Yeah, that's definitely one way to do it. So a lot of times credit unions or banks approach the coalition first, and the coalition can tell you about the work that they do, about who, what it means to be a member of the coalition, all of those kind of things. Additionally, I'm here to help too. So, I can help you look at the accounts that you have and see how they fit or maybe don't fit yet into the equation. I can also kind of talk to you about the benefits of having a certified account and what it's done with, what other credit unions have said and seen as something they're excited about. Yeah, so those are the two different avenues to approach this.
Great, thank you.
The other thing, so I just actually talked about a little bit of this because you definitely asked the right questions about it. Um, so the big part of this is to connect the pieces in Bank On. So Bank On is not just about having an account that meets the certification standards, which I'll talk about in the next slide. It's not just about having a coalition that is active in bringing different groups into the fold, but rather it's really about putting all those pieces together to have a solidified movement. And you need all of these pieces for this to work. So the coalitions, we support them through grant support, through technical assistance, through conferences, through trainings, whatever we can do to help these coalitions be healthy. And again, no coalition is not, I mean, they're similar sometimes, but not every coalition is the same in terms of how they run, how often they meet, what activities they do. There's a lot of fluctuation in the way that coalitions work, and we think that's really good. We think that's important. We don't want to have a top-down model where they have to do everything the way that we say they have to do it. The other piece, though, is that the accounts matter. So years ago, and some of you may know this or may have heard about the bank on account movement. And things have changed over the last 7 years. Many years ago, bank on was a term that was used for anything related to financial empowerment, anything related to checking accounts, anything related to savings accounts. We've really honed in on what it means to have a bank on account. We thought that was really important. Um, and really, the bank on brand is about having an account that's safe, affordable, and fully transactional. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And that helps really have a trust level with community partners and community engagement that these accounts are safe, that they can say, any account that we're referring to you as a client that meets the bank on national account standards, we're totally okay with. And that matters. We're also really excited with the national and regional partnerships that we have. So with credit union associations, with the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, who hosts our data hub, where financial institutions can, for free, easily submit data on their bank on accounts only, so that we know what the movement looks like. Um, and then the final piece to this puzzle is around bank on account activities. We know that it's hard to market accounts, and it's very competitive. Checking accounts, it's a very competitive market, right? So one of the things that we think is really important is to work with coalitions and the coalition partners that they also have to ensure that there are very easy ways to integrate banking access into existing program infrastructure. So where are you already seeing people? And where you're already seeing people is a really important part of this. So are you training somebody on workforce development? Is there summer youth employment that is new? All of those pieces are really important. Additionally, um, we also host things like banking roundtables, like we're doing right now with either credit unions or banks or both, to talk about these accounts and what they can do to help integrate them. We think it's our role to be that connection piece for you all. You can go to the next slide unless there's any questions on sort of the bank on model itself. So I've talked about this I've hinted around this, and I wanted to kind of talk about what the bank on national account standards mean. The first thing is that I mentioned that around 8 years ago, there was a pivot for this. The important part of Bank On now is that there's a generally agreed upon set of national account standards that an account has to meet in order to be considered Bank On certified. The reason we did that, and the reason that we have a comprehensive list of those features, is we heard from both coalitions and financial institutions that they needed more meat on the bone, so to speak, of what this equation looks like. When you tell a financial institution or a consumer or whoever that they need to have an account that's safe, what does that mean? What does it mean to have a safe account? Or that you say that it has to be affordable, what does that mean? And we also heard loud and clear from financial institutions who are in multiple markets where there's multiple bank on coalitions, that they had a lot of trouble designing an account for one metropolitan area and not for the other. So they needed one ask. They needed a unified ask of what that account looks like. And that way, you don't have to get certified in more than one market. So your national certification allows you to participate in every city that you have branches or have the ability to participate in. So these account standards are broken down into a few different buckets. The first is safety. The account cannot have overdraft or insufficient fund charges on it. And most of these accounts are able to do that by having a checklist checking account. So there's no paper checks with these accounts, generally speaking. There's a debit card, there's online banking, there's ATM access or branch access for cash, but there's no paper checks. There's also no inactivity or dormancy fees on the account, and that is very specific and purposeful, so that if somebody doesn't use the account for 6 months because they're using it like a savings account, or they have an interruption in pay, they don't get penalized for that. The accounts are affordable. So these accounts have a monthly fee of $5 or less. all inclusive, so there's no a la carte fees. It's a one set fee. There's a low minimum opening deposit of $25 or less to start the account. Additionally, there's a second option. So the first option of having a monthly fee of $5 or less. The second option for monthly fees is that you can go up to $10 as long as you provide two separate ways to waive the fee to $0. So for instance, you could have an $8 a month fee for this account as long as you provide two separate ways for the client to waive the fee to $0. And so that could be something like setting up a direct deposit, signing up for e-statements, using the bill pay system. There's a variety of different mechanisms that you could use for that. And then finally, there has to be functionality to these accounts. You have to be able to pay bills, and we give two different bill pay options. You have to be able to make deposits and withdrawals without getting charged for them. So, branch has to operate the same as you would on a mobile device, and there can't be penalties for that. You can see, I can also include in the chat box a link. I know that the national account standards, we try to design them in a way so that it's easy for you all to look at, and you can just, kind of compare your account to this account. A couple of questions that might come up that we often get are, number one, are there separate account standards for credit unions and banks? The answer is no. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The first is we wanted, we're certifying the account, not the financial institution itself, so to speak. So we're looking at the terms and conditions of the account, not the health or the amount of branches or anything like that related to the financial institution. We also heard from credit unions and credit union associations that they thought it was really important to sort of quote unquote be on par with the large banks and medium-sized banks who participate in this program. So we didn't want to have like a, for lack of better terms, we didn't want to have like a gold standard for one account and like a bronze standard for another account. We thought that that might dilute this. So definitely, we wanted, one seal of approval, one certification, and that was, we heard that loud and clear. You can go to the next slide. I just wanted to touch briefly on this program integration concept because this is really important. Not only do we recognize that you want to have an account that fits into your suite of accounts and is helpful for bringing people into the banking system, but we also know that you want, you're looking to build this out in a way that you're not adding consumers or clients one by one. We recognize that you need to be able to say there's a pipeline of people out there who want these accounts. And so what we help do is design programmatic integrations where we look at a program and we figure out where can banking access fit into that program for seamless delivery. So this is an example of our Summer Jobs Connect program, which we now work in more than a dozen cities. The Summer Jobs Connect program is bringing young people into the banking system through a credit union or bank account for their first time job working for a city or a county. So, cities hire each year camp counselors, lifeguards, people that clean up parks, whatever it might be. And for most people, this is their first job. For some people, this is the first bank account possibility in their entire family. So during that hiring and enrollment process, we have worked to set up bank accounts with those individuals so that they have direct deposit set up from day one when they start their job. And we do, this is the model for what we look at when we're doing program integrations for a variety of different programs. We have a specific fund that we use to help these program integrations get going. So it's not just the summer jobs program. We're doing a VITA program. Which is free tax preparation. We did a 6-city cohort for workforce training. So for service workers who are, getting retrained or trained We've set up bank accounts during that process. So, and again, this is great for you all because it means rather than, maybe 2 people a month opening an account like this, you're talking about cohorts of people, hundreds of people opening an account like this all at one time. You can go to the next slide. I wanted to talk really briefly about a proof in concept that was a really large scale success for us. And this relates to the bank on account opening process that we helped facilitate during the economic stimulus package that occurred in April and May and June of this year. We worked with the IRS and FDIC and CDC with our 11 bank on certified accounts that could be opened fully online. And we helped do a national marketing campaign to get people to open a bank account and enter in that bank account information into the IRS system so that they could immediately get their stimulus direct deposited rather than receiving a paper check. That was a massive success and a big scale for us. So one of the things that we've been doing is trying to think very large about what other federal and maybe state programs have stimulus or stipends or payments in their cycle. That includes things like unemployment compensation and possibly another round of stimulus if it were to happen. So we really were excited to not only partner with these national regulators and organizations, but we were really excited to see that people could open accounts and quickly input that information into the government system so that they could have an efficient, cost-free way to get their money quickly. And as you guys all know, people needed that money really, really fast. Waiting 3 weeks or 4 weeks or more than that for a paper check was not a great option for people. Nor during a COVID crisis did we want people to have to take a check and try to find a branch that was open, or worse, go to a check casher or whatever it might be. You can go to the next slide. So we're here to help. My associate's not on the call, this webinar call right now, Paige Diner. She's an excellent resource as well and works with so many of the coalitions of our 85 plus coalitions. But we want you to reach out with questions. We want you to sort of say, do we have an account that's close that we could tweak? Or we've been thinking about an account like this. How can how do we design it? One of the other things that I wanted to mention in terms of the design is that we have a partnership now with the 19 largest core processors that are out there. And as part of that partnership, the core processors are making it easier than ever to have a template or feature-based system to allow groups to open and start these accounts without having to start from scratch. So it's a cost savings mechanism for you all. So you don't have to necessarily pay to design a new account with your core processor. They should be able to help design that and turn on features for you for a particular account now that they're familiar or more familiar with the Bank On initiative. That's a big step, and that literally happened in November, so, or actually the end of October. So this has been a really exciting month for us. The second thing I wanted to say is I recognize that credit unions aren't governed with the CRA responsibilities. But I also recognize that for so many of you, you're mission based. And part of that mission may be religious, part of that mission may be city based or community based or poverty based, whatever it might be. This account works so well for that. It's very targeted and can be, looked at from an equity lens. It also can have a huge business case to it. One of the things that we hear from financial institutions of all shapes and sizes is that this account has worked so well for them because it brings in new customers that they would have not seen, and not always low income customers or low wage customers. This account appeals to a millennial generation or a first-time worker generation. How do we know that? Well, I mentioned that the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis is taking national data from financial institutions who have certified accounts. Of the 10 different banks and credit unions who reported in 2018, 75% of the new accounts that were opened were completely new customers to that financial institution. So that means 3/4 of the new accounts that were opened, and we're talking about more than 800,000 accounts for those 10 financial institutions total. So a lot of accounts, it's a big sample size. That means that 3/4 of those accounts had the people had never had a savings account or a checking account. They had never had a car loan. They had never done business with the financial institution. So this account has a strong business case component to it. One of the things that I always say is these types of accounts, these checklist checking accounts like we've put together for the national account standards, this is very similar to what Chime is doing in some ways. And this is very similar to what is moving the market right now. So I also think there's a huge business case to be made that goes beyond the scope of working to bring in people who are unbanked into the system, which was the primary goal when this began. But as with many projects, there are other pieces to this which we're very excited about. I'm going to stop there because I really did want this to be a little bit more of a conversation, but I wanted to address some things that Julie and I thought you guys might want to think about to help set some questions up. So I'm going to pause there. Feel free to use the chat. Feel free to ask, unmuted if you like to do it vocally too.
Yes, anyone who has a question for David, he is going to stay for the rest of the webinar. So you will have another chance to ask questions or chime in. So don't leave. This is not the end of it. But if you have any questions, please go ahead, unmute yourself, type in chat. Either way, I'll give you a minute to do that.
Hello, this is Michelle from MPS Credit Union. So I have a question. I understand that it's a checklist account. I understand everything that you were saying as far as allowing them to be able to, like you could have a fee that's higher to start with, but you have to be able to bring it back down. But my question is, do you all help or do you all identify? And I think I was kind of understanding this in screen when you started talking about marketing the product. So you have different groups that you've identified that would be great for the product, but do you help, for example, I'm a credit union. So do you help a credit union find those people to put in the account that you offer, that the credit union would offer?
Yeah, so I think that's a big part of what the local and regional coalitions are responsible for. Um, we have started doing some national marketing through Facebook, Twitter, and other social media platforms that talk about Bank On as a brand and try to get people to click and want to become banked and then go to the website and identify a credit union or bank that's near them or close to them. So that is one thing that we've started to do. But really what we're trying to do is empower the local and state coalitions to be doing this work. And the reason that we're so focused on them being the drivers of this is because they have the understanding of what it means locally in their community to be able to identify which programs are ripe for banking access. They're working with you guys to open accounts. Account opening procedures vary from financial institution to financial institution. So that ground level, local level piece of connecting for banking access, once the account is available and certified, it really is both a national and local process. We provide a customized seal of approval for you. So we literally provide you with a picture file that says Bank On. It says your credit union name, and then also says what the account name is. You can use that seal on your marketing material. You can put it on your website. we really do try to help build out the brand. But the truth is, at this point, if you were to walk up to somebody who has one of these accounts, they may have never heard of Bank On. They've heard of the financial institution that they have the account with. They may even know the account name itself, whether it's called like Safe Access or Safe Debit or whatever the account is called. But because the account is held by you all and not us, the Bank On term is really a wholesale term that is used for financial institutions, for government partners, for nonprofit partners. It's really not something necessarily familiar to customers. So that's why, again, we're trying at the local level to get these program integrations to be so successful. Does that answer your question?
It does, and actually, you just answered something else that I was going to ask, because, like, right now, we have an account, a checking account product that we offer, and it's under that company's name, and that's one of the questions I was going to ask. Does it have to be Bank On, because that could be somewhat misleading for a credit union to have, an account that says Bank On? So we could name it.
Yeah, you can name it whatever you want. Yeah, and we're happy to provide some feedback on names. We have a marketing and communications department. We've done some focus group testing with unbanked consumers about what terminology would drive them to open a banking account, those kind of things. So we'd be happy to weigh in if that's helpful. But yeah, no, I think only 1 or 2 financial institutions of the 60 have named the account literally Bank On.
Gotcha.
Most financial institutions come up with a name that either fits into their suite of accounts in some way, or something that they feel would be appealing to their community.
So this is Jennifer. I work with Michelle, and you mentioned marketing, which is Box. And so if we decided to do something like this, what is the scope of marketing that you would assist with? And beyond marketing, is there any other types of ways that you help us, operationally or anything with the account?
Yeah, great question. And I'm going to actually answer it working backwards. The first part is we help with the data collection piece. I mentioned that the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis nationally collects data just on this Bank On account. And the reason that that's important is it used to be that coalitions would ask financial institutions for data in every market. They would ask for different data points. There was no coordination. And so it was very frustrating for financial institutions who had to report data to multiple markets multiple times a year. We've now coalesced around one way of doing it. So we help with the data collection piece, which is really helpful and takes that off your plate. It's a very quick and easy process to do the data reporting, and it's a once a year thing. And it's voluntary. So, if in the first year it's just too much to take on, we get that. The second piece of your question is we can help with marketing to a certain degree. And I say certain degree because, we about 2 years ago put out kind of a survey and asked financial institutions who we partnered with if we did like a template flyer for marketing this account, would you all use it? And overwhelmingly, we heard that people wouldn't, because, and that makes total sense. You guys have your own colors, fonts, terminology, way of doing things, right? So we recognize that that's not the best approach to this. So we don't have the ability to be your outsourced marketing company, if that makes sense. What we can do, again, is offer you that seal of approval. We can offer you a review of anything that you put together. So we could wordsmith things. We could help with layout if that's helpful. We can let you know best practices of what we've heard from other financial institutions that are your size or maybe in similar markets about what's been successful for bringing people into the account and managing the account. We really look at ourselves as kind of, I don't want to say a trade association, but like a best practice aggregator. So I know that doesn't completely address how we can be helpful, but it really depends on what your needs are. And how hands-on you want us to be in your process. We've done joint press releases. We've helped with social media. There's no standardized way for us to participate.
No, that makes complete sense. Thank you.
Sure. And then again, the other thing I was going to mention that is really important too, is we can connect you and work with you with your core processor, which for some of you is no big deal. You do that all the time. But one of the biggest challenges we heard from small financial institutions is that it was expensive, time consuming, and confusing to try to design the features of this account to work. And they felt like the core processors weren't hearing them.
Well, unfortunately, the core processor expense is usually where the speed bump is to get anything,
I totally understand. And that's one of the reasons that with the American Banker Association help, and as well as others, we and Inclusive has been helpful too, the National Low Income Credit Union Federation. We've reached out and really said, can you create a template for this? Can there be an ability to sort of pull something off the shelf and say, here are the parameters for, here are the 17 features of a bank on account, here are the parameters. Now you guys take it from here as a customer, or I'm sorry, as a client, as a financial institution.
So I know you said you deal with the major ones. So is it fair to say that you deal with Fiserv, but specifically, do you deal with Fiserv Spectrum?
We do.
Online?
So it's a good question on the, one of the things we learned, we kind of went into this, I don't want to say blind, but we didn't know that much about core processors, to be honest with you. We didn't realize that inside FIS and Fiserv, there were so many divisions.
Yep.
We just didn't know. So we work with Fiserv, absolutely. Do we work with Fiserv Spectrum yet? I'm not sure, but we can definitely ask them to, we can ask our contacts at Fiserv to help us reach out to that division.
And it would
But
be
yes,
online, as Jennifer said.
yeah, I mean,
The ASP.
so, COCC, FIS, Fiserv, Jack Henry, Finastra, those are the most active ones that we've been dealing with and working with as of late. Oh, and Shazam too, which is one that I didn't know of before.
Never heard of them. Shazam. Wow.
And
Yeah.
David, are there some
The other thing we do
opportunities?
too. There are grant opportunities. Yeah, so there are grant opportunities, but the grant opportunities are generally for coalitions or groups that are looking to start a coalition. We can't make a grant to any for-profit institution. Could we make a grant to a credit union? Possibly, if they were leading the coalition. We don't have a fund, and this, I don't know if you were asking this, we don't have a fund that we could pay for like the technical assistance for you to develop an account, if that's what you were curious about. I wish we did. I would love to raise money to do that. But short of being able to do that, that's why we directly went to the core processors to basically say, it would cost millions of dollars for us to help every credit union pay to design these accounts. Can we work with you to create these templates so that we don't have to do that and we can make it much easier for them to do that?
Okay, any other questions before we keep on going? All right, and again, feel free to pop right in with any questions you might have. So I wanted to show you the Bank on coalitions and accounts are available across the country. They, as David said, they now are available in over 22,000 branches. And out of those, these are the credit unions that have Bank on accounts listed. And I wanted to show this to show you that we're very, very underrepresented on this initiative. So it's important for us to get out there. And I highlighted in red the accounts in our 3 states, Georgia, Alabama, and I didn't see any in Florida yet. Then now that's not saying that a credit union doesn't have an account that would fit this and they just haven't certified yet. So your credit union may have an account that very well fits the guidelines, but it just hasn't been certified yet as a bank on account. So to be able to get on that list, and speaking of marketing, another great partner within all of this, in Florida, we have the Florida Prosperity Partnership. I know that a lot of you are familiar with them. Georgia has a nonprofit association, and Alabama has a nonprofit association as well, very similar, but they're kind of like umbrella organizations over the nonprofit agencies in those states. They all are aware of Bank On, and when a client comes to one of their agencies, say it's United Way, and a client comes in for help from United Way, they guide them to those Bank On accounts. So us having a presence on the list would also, we'd receive marketing from those organizations as well, because they would be guiding people to our credit unions, to our accounts. And this list kind of gives you an idea of the names of the accounts also. A lot of different names out there. So again, you have freedom with that so that it fits in your portfolio. And you can also, if you're interested, Google these and kind of look at their website and see how they set up their accounts. And we can do that as well. We can help. If any credit union is interested in this initiative, please come through the foundation and we'll be happy to help, because I feel like together we're able to get further on this initiative. So come to us and we can research this instead of a million different people doing the research separately. We'll kind of join together and see what we can come up with. So the challenge again, and some of this information is, I'm just reiterating things that David has already mentioned, but the FDIC shows there are many reasons that consumers lack a basic transaction account. And we all know this: not enough money for the minimum balance, distrust of financial institutions, especially from people coming from other countries into Florida or Alabama or Georgia. I know Florida, that's very, very prevalent here. Higher unpredictable fees, identification, lack of the proper identification, credit or banking history problems. So a lot of them are driven to use expensive alternative financial services like our check cashers. And again, I'm preaching to the choir, but on payday loans, I just thought that these statistics are worth looking at again so that we can prevent people from having to do this. 12 million Americans use payday loans each year. As of 2017, there were more payday loan storefronts than McDonald's. And we all know that we see McDonald's every time we turn a corner. So unfortunately, payday loan storefronts have surpassed that. And you'll notice that most of the time they're set up near public transportation outlets. So near the bus stations or bus stops or train stations where people get off, and then it's convenient for them to use those payday lenders. The typical borrower is in debt 5 months out of the year. Average payday loan is $30,000 annually. 7 out of 10 use them for regular occurring expenses. It's not like they're overindulging on vacations and things like that. The average loan size is only $375. Every year, $9 billion is paid in payday loan fees. 80% of payday loans are taken out within 2 weeks of paying off a previous payday loan. 75% of payday loans are taken out by someone who's used them before. And again, you guys can kind of look over the rest, and I will share these slides. This is great information to present to your board to show the need for accounts like this and to get on the Bank On list and the Bank On initiative. And if you've never gone to a payday lender before, kind of take a little field trip, because we always wonder why do people go to these? They have to know there are better options out there. They have to know this is bad for them, but go yourself, kind of go incognito and act like you're interested in getting a loan, a payday loan, make up a story. And you'll see that they're very welcoming. They're not intimidating. They're quick. They're just, it's a lot less intimidating than someone in this position having to go into a bank or a credit union and seeing someone behind a desk or in a suit or whatever the case might be. So we all know what the dangers are. Close to 7% of US households are unbanked and almost 20% are underbanked. So over a fourth, more than 1 in 4 people are underbanked. Nearly 37% of unbanked and 45% of underbanked earn less than $30,000 a year. So these are some important statistics. And then speaking of inclusion and diversity, nationally, more than half of Black households and 46% of Hispanic households are unbanked and underbanked. And a lot of that is the trust issue coming in as well. All right, what do these accounts mean for our members? David kind of touched on this: asset building, cost savings, public safety, and financial capability. These are all things that credit unions do. That's the heart and soul of credit unions. So again, you'll have these slides to be able to share this with your senior management and your board. What are the benefits for credit unions to join the Bank On initiative? Stronger or new community connections, as I mentioned, with Florida Prosperity Partnership or the nonprofit associations in Alabama and Georgia. There are some great opportunities to make some community connections out there and to connect with maybe people that you currently don't have anything to serve. Also, we talked about these types of accounts may be good for our younger members, maybe teenagers just starting out or college students that might not have the discipline to have a regular checking account. And this might be perfect for them. So there are different ways to market it. Recognition from media and lawmakers. This is really a feel good, do good kind of service. National Bank On certification seal of approval. Potential grant opportunities. For those of you that are already CDFI certified, that's Community Development Financial Institution certified, or those of you interested in getting that certification, being involved in something like this is great for the application, and it's great when you apply for those federal grants. So, and there are other grant opportunities out there as well. Expanding membership to and underbanked, and it's another way to live out the people helping people motto. On the Bank On website, I pulled this up and it actually talks about one of the benefits is the CRA. It fulfills banks' CRA credits. So you can kind of see how it was geared toward banks at first. Even the name, I know where, it can't be credit union on because that's not as catchy. And everyone knows what a bank is from when you're little and you hear about put your money in your piggy bank. So I understand the name, but it definitely was geared toward banks in the very beginning because it does talk a lot about CRA requirements. But we all know that is in the credit union's DNA. We don't have requirements for CRA credits because they know that's what we do. That we fulfill those requirements every day without actually having those requirements. Let me take a look in the chat area. Okay, does Bank On have an initiative around obtaining valid ID for this audience? David, I'm going to push that question over to you.
Yeah. Mary, I'm really glad you asked that question. So we have been working with the OCC and FDIC as well as Rodney Hood with the NCUA to provide some guidance on what can work for a valid picture ID, because there's a lot of ambiguity there based on who your regulator is and know your customer rules. At our conference that Gravetta spoke at from the OCC, she took a very broad view of the ability to accept IDs that were the same municipal IDs issued by the city, consular IDs, a lot more than I think a lot of credit unions and banks realize that they could use. So there is a more expansive view of that. In our strongly recommended features category, we can't require it as part of the standards, but in our strongly recommended features category, we do say to accept alternative IDs will greatly help you open accounts for people. And again, these accounts are so safe that it would be, unlike say, and I'm not pigeonholing and saying this happens a lot, but it would be very hard for somebody to open an account, rack up, $1,500 worth of overdraft driven charges and then walk away from the account, right? Like this account really can't go negative. So these accounts are pretty safe, which I think goes to this concept of being more liberal on what valid picture IDs can work.
And that makes sense. It's just in my experience and in my working with the audience or the employers of farm team members or employees, that is the biggest thing is, they'll pay to get their top dog a citizen so that they can get valid. But, even if they're away from the country so long, then their consular becomes invalid, right? Unless they go back, and then, politically, it might not be the time to go back. So I don't know, for this audience, that's educating around citizenship and the opportunities there. So that they can be banked, and then there's those that are so low income that are on their own before they're 10, right? That they do get a driver's license, but then it gets taken away because of fines, and then trying to get that back, right? It continues to keep them in the cycle of not being able to be banked, right?
Exactly. No, it's a really good point. And that's one of the reasons that we've pushed so hard for municipal IDs to be accepted. And I recognize that not every city is able to do that. But for us, that's a really, for the clients we're interested in helping, that's a really inexpensive solution to this process.
That's true. I wonder if have you had any traction in Florida with that? I mean, our governor.
I don't know. Again, this is one of those issues that we would kind of work with a local or regional coalition on. I'll ask the Florida Prosperity Partnership on that.
And here in Tallahassee, especially Leon County, if you see anything, I think that I can't think of anybody or any audience off the top of my head, but I would just think that there's tons out there. I have some ideas that I will share with Julie so that she can share.
Great.
With David.
Absolutely.
All right, so we'll keep on going, and anyone who wants to stay involved in the conversation, in follow-up conversations and any information we get, just let me know. Send me an email and I will keep you all in the loop. But here are the requirements again. And again, we have this available on our website as well. But you'll see the overdraft or non-sufficient funds fee. Having none is sometimes a stop for us, for credit unions, because even though ours are usually lower than what a bank would charge, there is that fee. So I've heard that a lot of credit unions, that's what's holding them back from being on this list. So we kind of wanted, as an ending, to have a discussion, and we've talked about some of this, what are some potential ways to comply with this requirement at an affordable cost that maybe doesn't have to be passed down to the member? I know that sometimes it's okay to have to pass a little bit of a fee onto the member because our solution may be better and still more affordable than anything else that's out there, including those payday lenders. But does anyone have any ideas on that? And I know that Jay Brady is on the line as well and wanted to talk a little bit about a solution that Leverage may have. Mary or Jay, are you out there? If you're talking, we can't hear you.
Hey, Jay, you're underneath my name. Can you hear us, Jay? Can you give me a thumbs up?
Yeah, I can now. Sorry.
That's okay. So Jay was going to share with us a solution that we provide to credit unions through our payment solution suite of.
So one of the things that we've been working on with a number of credit unions, particularly those credit unions that don't have debit cards or are challenged, particularly the smaller credit unions, is actually working with them utilizing our prepaid debit card program, and attaching, for lack of a better phrase, that to their to a checking account or a savings account, and using that as a tool by which their members can access funds and utilize it, because it's effectively a debit card, but it being a prepaid card and then minimizing the fees associated with it has been a very effective way for them to be able to expand and their checking account relationships, okay, their DDA relationships, and increase membership as well, without necessarily having to incur all the costs associated with with developing a debit card program, and going out there and obtaining all that. So it's a much more cost-effective way of doing that. And that's something that I think would probably fit in this dynamic very effectively.
And does anyone have any ideas, or have you heard of any accounts, or maybe your credit union already has an account that you think might qualify for this? Okay, well then it's good that we're starting this discussion. So that is great. And some resources for you, and next steps would be, please keep in touch with me, send me an email, say, yes, I want to be part of this task force or whatever we want to call it, so that we can get credit unions better represented on this list. I put a couple websites on there, and I also listed the current coalitions in each of our states. So you can kind of see, and when I share these slides, the hyperlinks will be on there so that you can also get in touch with your local coalition. But make sure to keep us in the loop, or if you only want to contact us for now and then we'll work on this together, that is fine too. So we're not going in a million different directions. But you can see Florida has a lot of different coalitions, but we don't have credit unions involved yet. Alabama has a couple, and then Georgia has a couple as well. So any questions before we end? I know we've gone a little bit over our hour. All right, well, David, I want to thank you again for joining us today. And Mary and Jay, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, thank you, and have a wonderful rest of the week. I hope to hear from you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Take
I
care.
shot you some emails already, so.
Excellent, thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thanks,
David,
Julie. Have a great day.
You too.